Hello and welcome to a live deprogram with Keri Smith. I'm your host, Keri. Today is Friday, November 15th. I hope you're having a good November and getting excited about Christmas. I am. I know Thanksgiving hasn't happened yet, but I'm already excited about Christmas, possibly because my husband and we've been renovating this old house and we have a new porch and balcony, and our house doesn't look like the scary house. And our house used to be perfect for Halloween. It was the scary house. And now it looks so beautiful. So that's part of the reason I'm so excited for Christmas, because we're going to go big. We're going to decorate the porch. We're going to do, my husband says he's going to be like Clark Griswold in Family Christmas Vacation, a National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. So I'm pretty stoked about that. Welcome. If it's your first time here, this is a show that I do live on Mondays and Fridays, back to our regular schedule now that our traveling is over. And we talk about culture, we talk about ideology, and specifically, I'm coming from the perspective of being someone who spent 20 years in the left woke cult. It's most often called the woke cult today. We used to call it social justice. And it's a particular ideology that I've covered in depth that's very different than liberalism. It's not liberalism. And today, I want to talk to people about how to deal with friends and family who are in the woke cult, who have fallen into it or have been in it for some time. In the wake of the US presidential election, there have been a lot of people contacting me directly with asking for advice, sharing things that are happening in their family. And then there's also people who are publicly sharing what's going on in their family or with friends. A lot of people who are in that cult of ideology that I was in are threatening to or are cutting off communication with family members. They are saying, they're not coming to Christmas. Some of them, the public ones, they're posting videos gloating about how they're not going to Christmas. I saw a video yesterday of a woman on TikTok, an adult woman in her 40s or 50s, most likely, bragging about how she told her parents who voted for Trump that they can stuff the turkey up their ass, that she's not coming. So there's a lot of this happening. And since people were reaching out to me individually and asking for advice, I get the sense that there's a lot of people who have these questions. How do you deal with family members who seem to have fallen prey to a cult? And so I figured I would do a whole episode on it. We could just talk about it and talk about why there's hope. I think I think I'm living proof that there's hope. I was in that cult for 20 years. I had severely limited contact with some of my family members who I thought were evil, conservative Republicans. I had cut off friends, just, axed them from my life who did not share that ideology. And I had really whittled down my online world, my online echo chamber, to a very tiny, minuscule group of people who all shared my woke belief system. And so I came out of it after 20 years. And I know many people, there's many in the chat who used to be in the woke cult, who have left it, who you can talk to. I've interviewed many people who've left that cult. So there is hope. I'm not saying every person comes out of it. Don't misinterpret. What I'm saying is that some people do come out of it. That, don't be an extremist who says, nobody can wake up or everybody wakes up. It's some people wake up. So there is hope, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome. I see a lot of familiar faces or names in the chat. Good to see you guys. And for any new people, I hope you'll stick around. I know there's some new people reeling from the election results, and maybe some of this will resonate with you in a different way than the people I'm talking to. Maybe you are in the cult and you start to notice some things that you haven't noticed before. For example, if you are talking about cutting off friends and family because of a difference of political opinion, I saw somebody say this, and it's true. You're not in a political party. You're in a cult. This is cult behavior. Take any of the contemporary examples that we have of cults. Heaven's Gate, take any of these and look at how they limited communication until the only people they were talking with were people who are in the cult. Scientology does this. And they also go after people who leave the cult because they're viewed as heretics, like myself, or apostates who've rejected the belief system. So maybe this applies to you. Maybe you're one of those people. And so, hopefully you get something out of this as well. I want to start with this. I'm not going to obviously share any of the private conversations that I've had with people. I'm going to just show an example of one of the public ones that I've seen. And so this is a woman on Twitter. Someone tagged me in this one. Passionate woman XX. And she says, I have a daughter in the cult. She told me several months ago that I was a bigot and a transphobe and that, quote, she didn't feel safe around me, end quote, and didn't know what she would do about family gatherings. Yes, I don't yell or name call, but I do engage in discussions. She told the family that she is not coming home for either holiday, and she just asked for her secret Santa not to get her a gift. Cults tell people to cut off all ties with the people who love them and anyone who doesn't toe the cult line. And she's exactly right. This is what they do. They do limit the world around you. They have to create a false reality around you. Look at some of the people who are leaving Twitter, who are making big pronouncements about leaving Twitter. Now, a lot of the people doing this are very well known. They're in the media somehow. Some of them are broadcasters or journalists. I put that in quotes. Journalists. Some are entertainers. Don Lemon released a whole written statement about why he was leaving Twitter. He also did a video about why he was leaving Twitter, and it took him a while to actually leave his account. It has now finally been deactivated after making all of his pronouncements. Joy Reid, another propagandist who's left Twitter. This is a comedian here who I have really enjoyed, who I think is incredibly funny and is unfortunately part of the cult now and in this derangement. And this is Michael Ian Black from Kids in the Hall. He says, pretty sure I'm leaving Twitter. I'll continue monitoring this account, but it sucks here. And I just said they liked Twitter when it was a cult where only one ideology was allowed. Living in the real world with an open dialogue is hard for them. It's true. They loved Twitter just like they loved Facebook when it was censoring people, when under different ownership. Twitter was shadow banning and outright banning doctors and scientists who did not agree with COVID policy, who did not have the one allowed opinion on COVID treatment. They even banned the guy who created, the doctor who created the mRNA technology. And they loved it when that was happening. They loved it when people like Meghan Murphy, feminists, got banned for saying men are not women. She said, statement of fact, men aren't women. They loved it when they didn't encounter opposing viewpoints or anything that pierced the cult, any bit of truth that got through. And so now they're all making these pronouncements about how they're going to be leaving. A lot of them are going to some new platform, echo chamber platform called Blue Sky. They're hoping to make that a thing. I don't think that's going to become a thing, but they're all saying they're going there. And they're very unhappy when they bump up against the real world. And if you think about cults are high control groups. There are groups where there's a high degree of control over who you're allowed to associate with, what opinions you're allowed to have or espouse, what you're allowed to say, even over the words that you use. Cults typically create new lexicons. They try and destroy the meaning of accepted words that have had an accepted definition for all of human history. They try to destroy the meaning of words, of existing words, and then they create new words. And woke social justice definitely does this. If you think about all of the words and phrases they've added to our lexicon that they've tried to force on everyone, words like toxic masculinity, phrases like toxic masculinity, white privilege, white fragility. And then they also redefine, as I mentioned, they try and destroy the meaning of accepted terms. They try and destroy the meaning of words like harm or safety. Like, I fear for my safety with my mom, that person who said that to her mother. They try and destroy the meaning of words like woman, racism. All cults do this, and you can see it if you're paying attention in the woke cult. And so they have to get into what they consider a safe space, which is a cult space. And so they're all saying they're going to leave Twitter. A lot of the, as I mentioned, the propagandists at the top of the cult, they're all leaving. They're modeling the behavior that they want the rest, like the lowly sheep in the cult, the everyday people in the cult, to follow. They're emulating it. They're isolating themselves among only cult believers. This isn't good for them for many reasons. One, pragmatically, if you hope to win over more people, this is why cults die. They eventually get smaller and smaller. They can't survive in a free speech environment. Cults cannot survive in a place with open dialogue. And so they, over time, isolate more and more, which I hope, honestly, that woke gets smaller and smaller in these isolated places. But it's not good for them because they're not going to win more converts that way. And it's not good for them psychologically. It's not good to live in a false reality. It's not good to demonize people for simply disagreeing with you on policy, on politics. It's not good to be manipulated and, told that your family members are somehow oppressing you or that they're not safe to be around because they voted for someone different than you did. That's not healthy. And it's not healthy to just surround yourself with people who only agree with the one orthodoxy, the woke orthodoxy. Christianity doesn't do this. I get a lot of, whenever I do get troll comments, or I wouldn't really say trolls. Trolls are funny. But when I get detractors in the chat, sometimes there was somebody in the last video, he was saying, Keri left one cult for another. I get that comment a lot. It's not new that I've heard that, because I became a Christian, right? Christianity does not require that you unfriend people, that you stop associating with people who are not believers. Quite the opposite, actually. Christianity doesn't demand that you seclude yourself only with people who share your belief system. In fact, it's all about commanding you to go out and share the gospel. And part of that is through your behavior, not even with your words, just how you act. Because it's based on the idea that people will see Christ in you. And so it doesn't demand that I have tons of friends who are not Christians. Of course I do. Most people are not Christians. And so it doesn't, there's none of that, like, I'm only going to have Christians in my timeline. Like, no. That defeats the purpose. But woke does that. Woke is like, only associate with people who are of this belief system. And people are in the cult to varying degrees. There are some people who are just kind of loosely in it, or maybe they're not even in it. They're on the fence, or they're not in it, but they don't want people to know that because they fear the consequences. And so I sometimes hear from those people. They're the ones who will privately message you and say, I like what you said here, or I like this, or I agree with that. But they're not comfortable. I've had them tell me, I'm not comfortable hitting even the like emoji on a post of yours. I'm too scared. That's because they have too much of that cult around them. They're afraid of what the cult would say. That's okay. I understand the fear. You can talk to me privately. It's fine. People get over that fear on their own timeline. You can't just like pull them out of it. Like, stop being afraid, takes a little bit of growing to get over that fear. But people are in the cult to varying degrees. And so this woman that we started with, the woman who said her daughter has said she's not going to come to the holidays and she doesn't want her Christmas gift. Here's the first thing I would say. If it's someone who's really close to you, like a daughter, for example, you can't force the relationship. If they're at the stage of on that, degrees of cult, if they're at the stage where they're so fully committed to it that they are cutting you off and saying, I don't want anything to do with you or the holidays and I don't want a gift or whatever, you can't force them to stay, obviously. You can't force a relationship. And so part of possibly seeing this person recovered from the cult in the future means letting them go now. It means you can't be pushy, you can't be insistent, you can't be, if she says she doesn't want a Christmas gift in this particular example for don't send a Christmas gift. Don't say I'm forcing the gift on you. What I would do is consider letting her know, and maybe in a written letter, because how nice is that to sit and take your time and let the thoughts come out slowly? The lost art of handwritten letters, maybe in a written letter. I would let her know, short and sweet. Don't make it long about, what are you doing to me, cutting me out? Don't do any of that. Because this person's already emotionally reacting. Don't let them provoke that in you, like an emotional overreaction. Don't let them pull that out of you. But I would keep it short and sweet and let your daughter know how much you love her and that you're sorry she feels this way. And you can even, if you want to, you can speak truth in the letter and say, I think, unfortunately, you're being manipulated by an ideology that's telling you to cut off your loved ones. You can be honest about that, of course. But let her know you love her and you will be there for her if she changes her mind. That's what I would suggest in that particular scenario. If the person has children, one of the people I talked to recently who reached out to me online was talking about how basically their sibling was threatening, you're never going to see your nieces or nephews again. If they have children who you have a relationship with, I might do that a little differently. I might send them a gift, a Christmas gift. Send it to your sibling. And if your sibling chooses not to tell them that you sent something, that's on them. But at least you tried. And when that child grows up, trust me, when that child grows up and if they find out years later that their aunt or their uncle had been, dutifully trying to be in contact with them or be a part of their lives for years and had been sending letters or gifts that they were not receiving, like that child is going to know what's up when they grow up. So if they have a child, I'd treat that a little differently. It's Christmas. I would send a gift. That's just me. But to the person who's making the decision to cut you off and is like, I don't want any Christmas gifts and I'm not coming to Christmas. And it's like, okay, no gift. If that's where we're at now. But I love you and I'll be here for you if you change your mind. And I think it's important for them to hear that more than once. It doesn't mean that you write them all the time. Again, you can't force the relationship. But for example, when I was in the woke world, I was in the woke cult for 20 years. And I first fell hardcore into it in college when I was at Duke University. That's where I was indoctrinated in the late 90s. And my aunt, I've told this story before, but my aunt and I, she's very strong-headed. She would be the first to agree with that and very judgmental, be the first to agree with that. So I can say it. I'm pretty judgmental myself. And so we were just like two firecrackers and we were doing handwritten letters that were not nice back and forth. and I was telling her how she was part of the white supremacist patriarchy, and she was telling me how I was going to burn in hell. Like it was not good. That was a part of it, right? But looking back on those letters now, I can see the love in there that I couldn't see back then. And she always over the years, over 2 decades, I never cut her off. I would see her and stuff, but had I had woke contempt for her and disdain for her. I didn't treat her well. Um, but she continued to show me in small ways that she loved me no matter what. And flash forward to, 20 years later when I did start coming out of that cult of belief of the woke ideology, and I was at our home. And this is so beautiful. I've shared this before, but it's I was staying in her guest room, and I opened the guest closet to put some clothes in there, and I realized this is her prayer closet. It was an empty closet that was full of little Post-it notes with people's names. My name was one of them, and then underneath she had little Post-its with prayers. Like, she would sit in that closet and pray for me. Do you know? And I never knew that. She didn't do it so that she could be seen doing it. She didn't rub it in my face or tell me that. She just prayed for me. For 20 years, she's still praying for me. And that was just so moving to see that. Yes, Marby Dog, that is love. That is love. And to see that all those years later, and to understand that during that time, no matter how much I thought I hated her or hated what I thought was, her evil, conservative, bigoted, white supremacist, patriarchal viewpoint, right? No matter what I thought I felt for her, I realized in that moment, like, I always, during those 20 years, knew that my aunt loved me. I've talked to other people who have left the cult. I've interviewed many, and I've mentioned this example before too, but I'm going to give it because this is a good one. There was a guy who was messaging me back and forth and said I could use this example. When he got to college, he's quite a bit younger than me, but when he got to college, he ended up cutting his dad off. He fell in with the woke cult, which was telling him he was an oppressed minority uh, because of his race. And he was mixed race. He ended up calling his dad, part of the white supremacist patriarchy, all of that. Same thing. Treated his dad very poorly. But he said during all those years that he viewed his dad as the enemy, and they had a very strained relationship, if any relationship at all. He said his dad didn't shy away from disagreeing with him. He would speak truth to his son about what he believed, but he did so without hate. And he always let his son know, "I love you." And he said, it's not that behavior of the loved one that changed his mind. Just like in my story with my aunt, it wasn't my aunt who she's not the reason I woke up. And in this guy's story, his dad is not the reason he woke up. But the very important thing is, when a person who's in a cult ideology starts to have cracks in the foundation of their belief system, you're planting seeds with them all along. And if you've planted those seeds and they remember the way you treated them and that you treated them with love, they know you're, to use one of their words, a safe space to come back to. They're going to have shame when they wake up. First of all, they're going to have shame. They're going to have regret, remorse. They're going to be ashamed of how they treated you. And if you reacted in kind, like F you, whatever, if you burnt it down too, if they burn it down and you burn it down from your end, like they're going to be less likely to come back to have that relationship rekindled down the road because honestly, because of their own shame, not because of you reacting the same way, but because they're ashamed and they think you wouldn't be open to rekindling that relationship. So I think that's the best advice if it's a parent child relationship where the child is fallen into the woke cult, is saying they're cutting off contact. Just you can speak truth. Don't be afraid to speak truth. Don't let them walk all over you or treat you like crap. And for goodness sakes, stop subsidizing the cult. And what I mean by that is if they are saying, and this is the case for many of these, especially the woke young adults who are still living off of their parents or who have an apartment that's paid for by their parents or have a car payment paid by their parents or things like that. A lot of these people, you would think, if you've never been in the cult, or you would think that sounds ridiculous that they would say they're cutting off contact and still want you to financially support them. No, but they do. They will make these grand pronouncements. They will trash their parents on TikTok and Twitter. And then they'll still expect their parents to, make their car payment or what have you. Stop doing that. If they're cutting off the relationship and saying, I'm not coming to Christmas, I don't want to see you anymore, like, don't subsidize. It's like don't subsidize a junkie. Don't subsidize somebody's addiction. And that's not cruelty. That's actually tough love. It's like they're making the decision to end the relationship. It's not you making the decision to end the relationship. They are. And they're moving into this cult that's now saying, like, cut off your parents. Any money that you are sending to subsidize that lifestyle is basically like financially supporting an addict in their addiction. Thank you for the super chat, Jardum, for £5. Jardum. I almost said lira. Again, £5. Jardum says, I went through school and university, no mention of politics from anyone, even my parents, but I came out left-wing. How? LOL. Well, it's not always left-wing. Also, I don't know what you mean by that because, again, the meaning of words has deteriorated. So does that mean you're liberal? Okay. Liberalism's not what I'm talking about anyway. So, that's not what I'm talking about. But if you say you came out left-wing, are you in the leftist cult? I don't think you are. There's nothing wrong with having liberal opinions on policies. I actually am one of those people who thinks that we need each other. We need a balance. And when I say liberal, I don't mean woke, leftist, Marxist, communist. I mean an actual classical liberal. I think we need both to balance one another out, like the yin and the yang. Jordan Peterson has talked about this before. He's talked about how if you look at the big 5 personality tests, conservatives typically, on average, score a little bit higher when it comes to things like work ethic or conscientiousness on the big 5, right? And liberals will score higher on things like openness. And so he was sort of making the point. It's been a while since I heard this lecture, but I remember him making the point about how, a successful business, for example, needs both. You need the people who are high in openness and creativity, who are coming up with ideas. And you need the people who have a good work ethic and are conscientious and understand how to make things work. And you need both to implement the ideas. And if we were a healthy society and we weren't just completely going topsy-turvy back and forth between these extremists who want to pull us back and forth on the seesaw, then liberals and conservatives could get back to a place of having respect for one another and working with one another and disagreeing with one another on policy and what's the best government response to a problem without like hating one another and like, I'm cutting you out of my life. Thank you for the super chat. Peanut Butter, hello, Peanut Butter says, I bawled when I first watched Keri explain social justice ideology 4 years ago. I felt like Harry Potter under the covers. It was devastating. I'm so sorry that it was that devastating. I don't know if that was because you were in it and it resonated with you or because it was that moment of understanding. I've had many of those moments where I finally understood, like, oh, different things about the ideology. When I first started coming out of the cult, you know, one of the biggest things is understanding that it is a cult, that these are not bugs, these are features of the ideology. And it's really it is traumatic. That's why it's hard for people to wake up, because it's a psychological destruction of this whole false reality and false identity. This ideology gives them a false reality in which by force of will you can change physical reality. By force of will, I can say I'm a man, and I am. That's not true. It gives them a false reality about, you know, how the world, it tells them that the world is a struggle, a competition between identity groups for power. And that if they're in any of these identity groups, then they're oppressed. And if they're in any of these identity groups, then they're the oppressor. And there's some kind of mathematical equation for how oppressed and how much the oppressor they are. It teaches them they're not an individual, they're a member, they're a member of a collective. It's collectivism. It teaches them they're a group member in these different identity groups, and that how they treat people, judge people, and treat people should be based on what identity groups they're in. And then it tells them their identity is like some of the least important things about you in some ways, like your immutable characteristics. It's like, oh, your identity is, and you'll see it in their bios on Twitter when they're in this cult. First of all, they put the pronouns there, even when it's obvious. Most of the people with pronouns in their bio are not even claiming to be trans. It's people like that Snow White actress. It's people like that Snow White actress who's she's like, she, her. Yeah, we know. Thanks for letting us know you're in the cult, though. They have their pronouns in there, but then they have all of their identity. This is their one sentence bio of who they are in the world. Who are you? Who are you as a person? They tell you on Twitter. They see themselves as what the cult tells them they are. They list out their race and their sex and their sexuality and any mental illnesses they have and whether they're fat or not, and like all these different identity group markers. That's not who you are. And so leaving it is very traumatic because they have a false sense of reality and a false sense of identity. When I left it, I didn't know who I was. I had to start at the very ground level, not just of figuring out what I thought about the world, like brick by brick, building a new house of belief, and brick by brick, understanding who I am. That's really hard for people. So if it's someone like your child who's cut you off, and I know that's got to be devastating. And there might be things that they do that rightly so leads you to anger towards them. But I also understand, you know, wanting to have grace for them because they're going through something that's really psychologically damaging. I'm talking about the ones with good hearts, the ones with good intent. There are the ones in this cult who don't have any good intent. Their heart has been thoroughly consumed by darkness, and I set those aside. I set those aside. People who enjoy hurting others, people with cluster B personality disorders or cluster B traits, a lot of them, I set those people aside. I'm talking about the ones who you love for good reason and who are being changed by the cult. The longer they stay in the cult, they will pick up more cluster B traits. Even if they don't have a cluster B personality disorder, they'll pick up more of those traits because the cult it grooms those traits in people and it rewards those behaviors. The like cry bully is an example where they play the victim, but they're really abusing or manipulating you. It encourages that behavior. Brian Grappner's here, guys. Space Couch. Go and check out Space Couch if you get a chance. Brian is an amazing musician. I got to interview him. I also got to appear on his show, Space Couch. He said, I got death threats from the tolerant left when I walked away. Yeah, he did. He has one of the craziest walkaway stories that I've heard in terms of the level of vitriol that he encountered. Trolling the left is healthy, says Adam Worrell. Uh, yeah, yes, it is actually. Here's a this is a good jumping off point for me to make another distinction. So thank you, Adam Worrell. A lot of people get confused about, oh, well, you mock and you make fun of leftists and you make fun of woke, and then you talk about like loving people and showing them that you're still there for them. And yes, that's true. I can do both. Those are two different things. I think woke, the ideology, needs to be mocked. It needs to be trolled. You need to make fun of it. Satan hates when you laugh at him. It needs to be mocked and taken off of this like sacred throne. It's a terrible ideology. It's a ridiculous ideology, and mockery in the right context, use discernment, but in the right context is a great tool to use. But there's a difference between mocking woke itself, things that you see happening, current events or things in the news, or mocking the prophets, the propagandists and the ideology, like the public figures like Don Lemon, for example. There's a difference between mocking all of that, mocking the media who push this woke propaganda. There's a difference between mocking all of that and mocking someone you love who's caught up in it. I don't advise you to do the latter if you care about that person. This woman whose tweet we read at the beginning, for example, whose daughter is cutting off all contact, it sounds like she's devastated and she would hope that her daughter is recovered at some point, recovered from the cult. In that case, you don't treat, obviously, you're not going to personally treat one-on-one your daughter with mockery and contempt. That's not the right tool. There are different tools. It's sort of like how, from a Christian perspective, I've heard my pastor, Bradley Helgerson, talk about how, God is both, uh, uh, God judges and he shows mercy. It's both. Because God is truth, but he's also love. It's both. And you have to you have to use discernment and figure out the right tool depending on the situation, depending on the context. I don't treat the people that I love, and there are still people I love who are in the woke cult, I don't treat them with mockery and contempt. If I hope for them to be recovered and I think there's someone with a good heart who might be recovered one day, I don't treat them that way. I don't mind if they see me mocking their religion, mocking their ideology publicly. I'm going to do that. I'm going to speak the truth. I'm going to make fun of the belief system. Yes. But I'm not going to be a jerk to them. Why would I? There's a lot of people who think that they have to fight woke by, picking fights with their friends or family who are woke. You don't have to do that. Sometimes they'll come to you and they're looking for the fight. That happens a lot. That happens a lot. And if you do that to me, I will respond to you sometimes. But I don't do the same to them. I don't go to their walls and I'm like, ha 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 ha. It's not like, no, gross. MDev, Keri, can I adopt you as my little sister? Sure. Oh, I hope that's not because you've lost your sister. Man, there are so many people. There's a lot of people affected by this. It's not just the celebrity tweets that we're looking at of people who walked away. It's not just that. I mean, anecdotally, if the messages I'm getting from people are any indication, a lot of people are dealing with this right now post-election because the woke are all heightened in a heightened sense of emotion right now and looking like revenge seeking and all of this. And they're looking to clamp down on the ranks and make the cult more secure and to, they're trying to do what cults do, which is to manipulate people through a threat of removing affection, a threat of removing a relationship or access to other family members, like children of theirs. These are threats. These are an attempt at emotional manipulation. It's sort of like, do what I want, and then I'll stay in your life, and you can see your nieces, for example, and you can't bend to that. You can't allow that person to, whether they realize it or not, they're doing cry bully. They're trying to control you and your opinions and how you vote and everything by threatening to remove themselves and any children they have from the family. You can't, and what are you going to do? Are you going to live your life like, okay, I'm going to vote Democrat from now on? Like you can't let them do that. You can say, I love you. I think you're under the influence of a dangerous cult ideology and I want to be in your life and I'm here. If you come out of it, I'm here. I'm going to take some questions from the chat today. So if you have questions or things that you don't mind sharing in the chat, feel free. Texas Sheep Lady, hello lady. She says the first wave of family loss was COVID. The second was Donald Trump. The third is the current results of the election. Time to make family after friends. Yeah, and it's a little different with friends when they do that. It depends on how close you are. A lot of people have lost friends. I've lost friends who I thought were good friends, and it hurts and it's traumatic. But on the other side of it, it's sort of like, well, I'm glad that they removed themselves from my life before before I got further along with them in trusting them and having them at important events and things, sort of like a revealing. And I try and see the silver linings in revealings of like, oh, okay, I'm glad that you revealed more of yourself to me. When you first wake up and if you were in that world in any way, even if you just had a foot in it and you thought it was liberalism, like Brian Grappner was talking about when he walked away, you're going to lose a lot of people. I lost a lot of people when I walked away. And it's hard to believe for some people when you're going through that it's going to be better on the other side, but it is. Because some of those people, they're not good-hearted anyway. You just didn't know it. You didn't see enough of them. They don't have good intent. Some of these people are not in the cult because have big hearts and they've been manipulated. Some of these people are in the cult because they have dark hearts and they like using anything. And this is the most popular ideology right now. So this is what they're going to use. They like using anything to control others and to gain power, money, fame, what have you, status. And so when those people take themselves out of your life, if you're someone who's going through that with a lot of people, maybe you came out as a Trump voter. Maybe you're a liberal who came out as a Trump voter. I know that's happened to some people as well. And I'm telling you, it's almost like your garden is weeding itself. You don't even have to sit, and it takes forever. My rose garden, I have weeded it so many times. It takes forever. I'm gonna try the cardboard method next. Lots of people told me to do the cardboard method. Anyway, it's sort of like your garden's weeding itself for you, so you don't have to sit there and you don't have to figure out who are the weeds. They're doing it. They're taking themselves out, and you know what's gonna grow there after? Beautiful flowers. I promise you. I promise you, you will make so many friends on the other side of that. There'd be more room in your life, more space in your life. There's a saying about how we are an average of the 5 people we spend the most time around. And if you're a person, we're getting close to the end of the year and New Year's resolutions and all of that. One thing you can try to do, if you're one of those people who keeps track of the year and did I hit the goals I wanted, and did the things I wanted to see come from this year, the fruits I wanted to see grow, did they grow? If you're one of those people who keeps track of that, I didn't used to be, but I've been trying to be the past few years. And if you're a person who does that, you can sit and look at the end of each year, who are the 5 people I spent the most time around? And see if that adage is true. And in my case, I've found that it might be true. It might be true. And so if there's something you want to change about yourself, if there's a bad character trait that you want to eliminate in yourself, and you've got one of those top 5 people has that trait, like, maybe not make them in the top 5 people you hang out with next year. The point being, as people come and go, you're clearing up more space. We have a limited amount of time. Our life is on loan. Our body, everything, time. We don't own time. Was it C.S. Lewis that was talking about how, yeah, it was in the Screw Tape Letters, where he had a part where the demon was talking about how humans think they own time. And they're always saying my time, right? Or my body and my this and this. It's, as a believer, I would say like all those things are on loan from a benevolent God. Like you have a limited amount of time. So as people take themselves out, like you're going to have more time. And there's going to be new people, and hopefully you've learned things and you get more discerning and you can see where the red flags are. That's what I've been learning and trying to do, so that you are a better gatekeeper when it comes to who you allow to be very close to you. I've made some of the best friends in my life on the other side of leaving woke. And these are friends, not allies. When you're in a cult, it's like they all call themselves like their friends. They're allies. They even use that word. Woke people don't have friends. They have allies. And if you leave the woke world, you will lose all those allies. But then you'll get to discover what friends are. Friends are people that can see who you are, your real identity, not your race and your sex and your sexuality and all these crazy things that woke tell you are. Friends are people who can see you, and they value you, regardless of whether you have the same opinion on political policies. I'm going to take a second and see if there's any questions here. James Leonard. It might get worse before it gets better. I'm willing to sacrifice to get America back on track. Do people agree? Yes, I agree. In the context of what we're talking about today, one of those things is, you might end up having to I mean, not by your own choice, but you might end up having to sacrifice some relationships with people you really love because you're not willing to let them control you and how you think and who you vote for or what you say. You might end up having to sacrifice some of those. I also think I saw an interesting post today from James Lindsay. And James Lindsay, as you know, is an atheist. He had a really Christian post today, and it was a post about how moving forward is going to require forgiveness for people, for average everyday people who were caught up in the evil of the past decade. And that's a very Christian idea, forgiveness and grace for people. And he also said that doesn't mean that there are not consequences and that there's not justice. There should be justice. Some of these people, I think, belong in prison. I'm talking about the people who orchestrated a lot of this stuff. Fauci, I think. He needs to be investigated. There need to be consequences. There needs to be justice for the American people. There needs to be justice for how they coerced people to take the vaccine. There needs to be justice for how they fired people, how they told people in the federal government or people that were enlisted that they had to take it. There needs to be justice for that. But what Lindsay is talking about is there also needs to be room for forgiveness for average everyday people who were caught up in it. And that's kind of how I view people who are coming, if they are recovered down the road, like if that woman's daughter is recovered down the road, that requires forgiveness. But how you choose who you forgive and for what, that's up to you. I'm not one of those people who's like, you got to forgive everyone. No, I I don't. I try for that, but I haven't succeeded yet. I try. My pastor gave me a good practice, and that's if there's somebody you haven't forgiven for something yet, you can pray for them, real prayers, good prayers. The simplest one I do, if you want to borrow it, is I say their name and I pray that they're surrounded in light and love and truth, God's truth. It's pretty open-ended. It doesn't pain me too much to pray for my enemies that way. But over time, that will change your attachment to it, your emotions around it. Jardum for £5. Thank you, Jardum, for the super chat. Thanks for supporting Deprogrammed. Says, I was best friends with a lesbian couple for 20 years. They said their 2-year-old son was a girl. I questioned it and they walked away. Very sad, and I miss them. Yeah, Jardum, it doesn't sound like you're in the leftist cult at all. In fact, it sounds like you've had people leave your life because they are in that cult. Maybe one day you'll get a message from them, depending on how you treated them when they left. Hey, Randy, thanks for supporting Deprogrammed. Randy Wallen for $5 says you can't make new old friends, but you can make some very good new ones. That's true. Very true. I've made a lot of good new ones, and I do still have some good old ones, which is good. Deranged Lunatic DL for $1.99. How did you get to your great awakening? So if you want to hear the full story, I would actually suggest you go to a different channel. I would go check out the interview I did on trigonometry 2 or 3 years ago, or the more recent one I did on Peter Boghossian's channel, because those are full interviews where they ask me all different, they get into the nitty gritty of it. But the short answer is, let me see how I'm going to make it short this time. I was seeing things for a while, which I think a lot of people in the cult do, that were concerning to me, but I was probably, it's best to say, purposefully blind to them for a while. I didn't want to pay attention to them. It's sort of a willful blindness. So I was seeing things like my cult piling on Fit Mom. That was one. I don't know if you remember Maria Kang. I still remember her name. She was a mother, is a mother. I don't know what she's up to today, but she was doing a lot of fitness classes for mothers and teaching moms how to work out with their toddlers, with their kids. And she had a poster that it was her looking super fit and hot, and she had all of her kids like hanging on her arms and stuff, and she said, "I'm a mom of however many." She said, "I'm a mom of this many kids. What's your excuse?" And it's meant to encourage people and show people that you can do it no matter the challenges. Like, you can stay healthy, you can stay fit no matter the challenges. But the woke world exploded on her, the very feminist part of woke that I was in, especially. I that was how I got into woke. I came in through the feminism door, and it was just, they were saying she was body shaming and fat shaming, and it was oppressive, and they piled on her, tried to cancel her. People were sending her crazy hate mail. It became a national news story. It was all over the news. I think she went on a couple of talk shows because of the hate, and they wanted demanding apologies. Again, this is all because she's trying to encourage moms that you can stay healthy, you can stay fit. And I didn't join the pylon. I just didn't say anything. I think I said one thing somewhere on Facebook, and I got attacked for it in the comment section. I said something on somebody else's post, and people it was not allowed. So I just shut up. I was a coward. But that bothered me. That was in the back of my head for a good while. And then I saw, in my feminist part of the woke world, I saw how they treated Megan Murphy, who is a very prominent feminist in Canada. She's not in Canada anymore, but they were calling her a TERF because she was objecting to this idea that you can magically change your sex just by force of will, as if you're a god. And she was objecting to men in women's spaces. And so this whole feminist part of woke that had been on her side, because she was a very prominent third wave feminist, just started attacking her on all the feminist blogs and online. And it was a huge pile-on. And I said nothing in my circles. I said nothing. It's not like I had a platform or anything. I mean, I have a platform that everybody has, but I didn't have a podcast or anything like that. But I'm just saying, in my everyday life, I was online. I was on those same blogs. I was on the board of several feminist organizations, and I was friends with lots of people who were prominent third wave feminists, and I didn't stand up for her, even though I thought it was wrong what was happening to her. So I was a coward. So there were all these little things. And this is why I say, when you plant a seed, you don't know how many other seeds are being planted and what's going to happen with this person and when they might wake up, if they wake up. So there were lots of things like that. Those are just two examples. And I would just kind of turn a blind eye to it. And then in 2016, there's all these kind of woke breaking points, is what James Lindsay calls them. That was a woke breaking point because Donald Trump was elected and the whole world went crazy. My whole world went crazy. My woke echo chamber was just like they are today, hysterical, calling everybody sexist and racist, calling everybody Nazis, talking about how they were going to punch people. Friends of mine were posting stuff about all the people they wanted to kill, all the Republicans they wanted dead. And I'm looking around like, this is not liberalism. What is this? This is sick. It's sick. And what was crazier was I was witnessing what we've all maybe become accustomed to now, where you see people who think they are the good guys saying disgusting, murderous things, behaving in disgusting, vile ways, while projecting to the world that they're the good guys. And that's a mind F, right? Like, that's like, what is happening? That was part of it. Seeing the way that my side was physically attacking Trump voters leading up to the election, that was a big part of it. Watching videos of the left attacking Trump supporters as they came out of Trump rallies, like bloodying them and stuff. That was a big part of it. And so after the election is really when the 2016 election, I was trying to figure out why Trump won because I didn't want him to win again. I was also devastated, but I didn't lose it like that. Um, but I was trying to figure out why he won, and I was trying to talk to people in my cult, like, "Hey, maybe it could be this, maybe it could be that. Like, look at this." I started looking at content I'd never looked at before, people I wasn't supposed to engage with. The cult had done a good job of like I said, I had constricted my online echo chamber. And so suddenly I was like, I'm confused. There were things that didn't make sense. Like my cult was telling me Trump won because of racism. And yet I knew if you looked at the numbers that there were people who had voted for Obama twice who then voted for Trump. And I watched videos with poor Southern whites who were talking about how they voted for Obama and then they voted for Trump. And so I knew, I was like, that's not racism. It's not sexism. They were saying it was sexism. I'm like, it's not those things. We have to figure out what it really is. Why are people voting for Trump? And that was a big no-no. The cult, you know, I was piled on my Facebook for asking questions, for sharing videos outside of my echo chamber, like, hey, listen to this person. I shared the video of the poor Southern whites who had voted for Obama and then voted for Trump. I shared interviews with them. And it was really like, quit trying to humanize, quit trying to humanize these bigots. It's just racism and sexism. So that's why I think this is a woke breaking point. You are going to see a lot of people waking up now. Yeah, there are the ones we're talking about who are going further into their echo chamber, who are saying, I'm not coming to Christmas, I'm cutting off contact, whatever. But there are a lot of them, the ones who are noticing, the ones who are looking around and saying, hey, wait a minute. Why did all these liberals vote for Trump? Why is Trump appointing liberals? He just appointed, by the way, RFK Jr. I hope he gets confirmed. Secretary for Health, Tulsi Gabbard. Why is Trump appointing all these liberals? Why did all these liberals I know vote for Trump? There are people who are asking these questions and who are saying, maybe it's not racism and sexism, you know? Like Keri, for example, I voted for Tulsi Gabbard. I voted for Obama twice. It's not, you can't just easily sprinkle your woke magic fairy dust and say, like, she hates people of color and women. That's it. That's the ticket. No, that's not what happened. And so there are some people who are asking questions, and I know that what happened to me in 2016 is happening to them right now. Their fellow cult members on social media or in real discussions in real life are basically trying to caution them and tell them not to ask questions and not to try and figure it out. That's happening. And a lot of those people are going to wake up. Because the more, in my case, the more the cult told me you can't investigate, you can't listen to opposing ideas, you can't try and understand what happened with the intention of preventing it from happening again. Again, remember, I didn't want Trump to win again back then in 2016. And they were telling me you can't even try and figure out why he won. So I was like, this doesn't make any sense. We're going to keep losing if we don't understand it. I watched a video by I think it's a UK comedian. My Brits in the chat, tell me if I get this wrong. His name was Jonathan Pye. I remember this in 2016. He had a video where he was like in character, kind of. I think he's a comedian and he had a late night show or something. On camera, he was ranting about political correctness and he was screaming about, like, this is why Trump won. And in character, he was very upset that Trump won, but he was explaining how crazy the woke world had gotten and why people voted for Trump. And that was one of the first videos I watched. I was like, everything he's saying is true. Oh my goodness. Oh, they did not like me sharing that. So you're going to see people like myself and others trying to explain it to them. And the ones with ears to hear It's a Bible verse there. The ones with ears to hear are going to hear it, and they're going to be slapped down by the cult, and they're going to leave eventually. It's a slow process, but they'll leave. There are going to be more people leaving because of how the cult reacts. When the cult clamps down and makes everything smaller and is like, get off Twitter, go to here, when they clamp down, more people wake up. That's always going to happen. The more controlling they get, the more people will wake up. Jonathan Pye is a leftist. Yeah, he might be, but he had a great video. Like I said, in 2016, he wasn't happy that Trump won, but his video answered more of the questions than my cult was answering. Hefty Joe says, don't ask questions, just consume product. That's it. That's what they want. It's so funny, isn't it? How all the propagandists like Joy Reid and Dawn Lemon and all these different celebrities they're all like, I'm going to Blue Sky. Everybody go to Blue Sky. And I do see some of my woke Facebook friends, people who haven't friended me yet for whatever reason. I see them all posting about how they're on Blue Sky now, don't you get it? They treat you like sheep. They want you to go to Blue Sky to consume product, which is them. They want you to keep consuming the product that caused you to lose, that caused you to not even understand what's happening in the world. Like The View, those women are spinning a false reality. There's not a single contradicting opinion on that whole panel. They're spinning a false reality. And then when the real world smacks you guys in the face and you're like, what happened? I thought Kamala was going to win. Where do you go to figure out what happened? You go back to the false reality. You go back to the cult, to the little tiny echo chamber that got everything wrong. It's not a good solution. Dion says, being a lifelong contrarian keeps me safe from cults. It's good protection, I'm sure. That's good. Jacob Ironside, I like the people saying I'm leaving the United States and moving to Hawaii. Are people saying that seriously? I thought that was a joke. That they didn't know that Hawaii is part of the US. Are they serious? That's pretty funny. That's like that celebrity. Who was that? This is an old reference. That celebrity who thought that chicken in a can, what's it called? Chicken from the Sea, which is a tuna brand. They thought that was a chicken or something. That's what that makes me think of. Jardum for £5. Thank you for supporting Deprogrammed. Jardum says, I volunteer at a far left recycling charity. Honestly, you can't speak against the dominant ethos. This lets rather ignorant women, dominate. No, it does. You don't have to apologize to me. I know how this goes. There are a lot of women who are benefiting greatly from the dominance of woke ideology, from it being the mainstream, the most popular religion right now. There are a lot of unqualified women benefiting from it, in my opinion. I don't disagree with you. People who are using it, as I said, for control over others, fame, money, power, social status, influence. Yeah, they work it. It's like con artists working a grift. Randy Wallen for $5. Thank you. Randy says, first it was Mastodon, then Threads, now Blue Sky. Yawn. Oh, yeah, I missed out on, I didn't even notice Mastodon and Threads. That seems like exactly what you're saying, a big whoop. I created an account there and I don't think I've ever been back. I was like, do I need to do this? I don't think it's just an echo chamber. Somebody said, here, I wanted to show you a couple more of these stories. Let me go back to this. This woman that we started with, whose daughter is cutting off the family. There were a lot of people in the replies. Here's one. My son is also a victim. He consulted a doctor for his anxiety and ADHD, and instead of helping with his mental issues, they misled him to transgenderism and hormones. He's a very smart kid, but struggling to graduate college because of brain fog. When he was young and asked what he wanted to be, he would say, "I want to be a dad." Trans cult destroyed my son. Can we file a class action lawsuit? I will give up everything just to wake him up from this madness. Well, in terms of legal consequences, I do hope that there are legal consequences for these hospitals, for the doctors who are pushing this on young people. It's experimental medicine. Go and read the WPATH files. I've covered it before if you want to go watch my videos on it, but go and read it yourselves. It's experimental, what they're doing to people. It's abusive. Here's another. My daughter has been gone for 5 years, victim of the same cult. No contact for 3 years unless she needed money. That's what I'm talking about here. A lot of these young adult woke people who are so far in the cult that they cut off contact for 3 years in this case, they will still expect the parents to subsidize the addiction, to subsidize the cult, to subsidize what they've chosen. Don't do it. That's not cruelty, that's tough love. He continues, then she only texts, and one brief phone call in the past 2 years, her high school teachers guided her path into this madness. I have receipts. I don't doubt it. There are a lot of therapists, as the first person mentioned, doctors, teachers. All of the institutions have been infected with this ideology, with woke ideology. We know this. There's all different points of entry for people now. When I got into it, fortunately, it was pretty contained to university campuses. It was pretty contained. And even on the university campuses, at least at my school, it was contained to the social sciences. But now it's in all the hard sciences. It escaped the university. It's in childhood education. It's in our medical institutions. There's lots of ways that people are getting into it. I'll Fight You Naked. Thanks for the super chat. I'll Fight You Naked for $2 says, my woke family members seem to be softening a bit. That's great. I like hearing that news instead of just the cutting people off news. That's great. Maybe you'll see with them kind of what I was talking about, the people in the cult who start to ask questions, who want real answers as a result of this election. I think those are the people who might start softening up now. One can pray. MDev, why hasn't the US stopped treatment of young people like Europe has? Well, we've never done a systematic medical review here. So that's one thing. The other is that because the woke cult changes the definition of words, as I mentioned, you would hope that when you write a law that this law is going to protect against all cases of abuse. For example, when you have we have existing laws against child abuse and medical malpractice, and you would think these would cover it. But not if they change the language. Not if they change what words mean. And so this cult came out with a whole lexicon so they could cast what they were doing to children in a positive light, when what they're doing to children is abuse. It's medical malpractice, it's abuse, sterilization, double mastectomies on kids, chemical castration, which we know they're doing, the puberty blockers. They've admitted this. The WPATH president, Marcy Bowers, admitted on camera. You can go and watch Marcy Bowers saying that 100% of the little boys that they give puberty blockers to in Tanner stage 2, that's age 10 and 11, that they are never able to achieve orgasm or sexual function in adulthood. That's chemical castration. That's what puberty blockers do. But so what they instead of calling all this what it is, abuse, medical malpractice, they call it gender affirming care. That's how they got it in. It's gender affirming care, and you're a bigot if you don't support it. So one of the reasons is that our laws were not effective against a cult ideology that redefines words. But the other reason is now, if you look at what's happening in the progressive European countries that have banned this barbarism against children, those countries have done systematic medical reviews. We haven't yet. Why not? I think it needs to be a top priority under Trump. So they can come back with the same results that, hey, yeah, this is experimental and you're doing this to children also who can't consent. That's something we need to put pressure on the Trump administration to do. Yes, that's what I was thinking, Jacob. With Robert F. Kennedy Jr., we might get an in-depth systematic medical review. I hope so. There's a lot of things I hope with him in that position. I'm very excited about that. Jardum for £2. Thank you, Jardum. Says, I pushed a pram when I was 5, but I'm still a bloke. Oh, you push, and that's a baby stroller, right? You pushed a baby stroller, but it didn't change your sex magically. Savrix, hey, what's up, dude? For 1999, thank you for the generous super chat. Says, hi, Keri. I consider myself very illuminated, but I've recognized that I haven't saved a few of my loved ones, and I don't know how. Your input and intimate knowledge of woke methodology helps and is something I value. I learned from you. Well, thank you very much. I hope I'm able to help. I mean, if you view it from a certain light, what I'm saying would not be great news because I'm saying there's no magic button. There's no magic way to save someone from the cult. So first of all, if you do have that sort of sense of responsibility, like let go of that. It's not up to you. You can't control people. So don't beat yourself up, first of all. But secondly, what I'm saying though is just be cognizant of how you behave around the people who you love who are lost to it. Be aware of how you treat them. And I would say if they're people you love and you think they have a good heart and you want them to get out of it one day, like leave the door open for them to do so with you. You want to be proud of how you treated them years down the road, not ashamed of it. And good luck. I know what that's like, unfortunately. Jardum for £2 says my cousin had a My Little Pony co-action. Still, what? I don't know if I'm reading this right. My Little Pony. Oh, straight, he says. He had My Little Ponies, but he's straight. Yes. It's so funny how they've come full circle. The woke cult has come full circle on this whole idea of sex stereotypes and gender stereotypes, because back when I was being indoctrinated into woke, when I was at Duke, I was a women's studies minor, and everything they were talking about was how, you know, gender is socially constructed and there's no right way to be a woman or a man, and we have to break out of these constricting gender roles. And now the woke cult, they're the ones saying, well, if you like to play with My Little Pony, you must be a girl. Or if you like to wear pink, you must be a girl. That's crazy. No. Dion with the great quote, Dion, queen of quotes, there's no swifter route to the corruption of thought than through the corruption of language, George Orwell. Absolutely. And I've mentioned this on the last show or maybe 2 shows before, but I can't recommend this enough. Whether you are a person who's slowly waking up or has questions, or whether you have lost friends and family to the cult and you're trying to understand woke better, it may not seem like an immediate thought you would have to go and read some old classics, dystopian classics that are not based in this time, but go and read these old dystopian classics, because you'll I think what you'll find out is what I found out is that human nature doesn't change. And so a lot of times we look at these dystopian novels like 1984, for example, or Brave New World, and we're tempted to think, oh, they could see into the future. Oh, they could see what was going to happen. And really, it's like they're just looking around and seeing what's happening around them now, because human nature doesn't change. And the madness of crowds, as Douglas Murray puts it, you can see that throughout history. Cult mentality, cult behaviors. It will help you understand it better to read some of those old books. ADL 1992, The Handmaid's Tale. Actually, I would definitely suggest The Handmaid's Tale. I love The Handmaid's Tale. Some of you guys may not know this. Margaret Atwood, for most of my life, has been one of my favorite authors. I even used a Margaret Atwood quote in my high school yearbook. When you get to pick a senior quote, I took a whole class at Duke. I took a whole class on nothing but Atwood. Two whole shelves of this bookshelf are Margaret Atwood. I love her. Yes, I know she's got crazy takes on Trump and everything. I know. But a lot of these people who've taken The Handmaid's Tale and are dressing up like handmaids and acting crazy, and they've never read the book. And if they did, they missed some very important parts. One of the things in The Handmaid's Tale that's interesting is that the main character's mother is this like radical feminist who was doing very fascist things, who was doing things like burning books and stuff that they didn't think were feminist enough. Like a lot of their takeaways from this are the people who are out there who've never read it and are dressing like handmaids. A lot of their takeaways are wrong. I would read it. It's a great piece of dystopian fiction. Yes, and at the time when she wrote it, it wasn't an allegory about American conservatism or Republicans. It was about radical Islam. Dion has a great Margaret Atwood quote. There's no fool like an educated fool. That's true. Atwood, read your own quotes. I'm pretty disappointed with her Twitter feed lately. I'm like, oh man, she's one of these people who's sort of a little bit spiraling over Trump. I think it's hard for her though, because how could you not? You have all these people. She would basically have to become a J.K. Rowling, and again, that's a hard thing to do psychologically, to stand up for truth and to see your way out of the cult. And you've got all these adoring fans, just like I compare her to J.K. Rowling because they both have this adoring fan base. But in the case of Rowling, she was like, I don't care if you get mad at me and burn my Harry Potter books and, call me all kinds of names and treat me like crap and send me death threats. I'm going to say what I think is true. Whereas I feel like Atwood, she hasn't reached that point. She's like, I think she's somewhat flattered by all the people dressing up like handmaids and stuff. Ugh, no, it's not flattering. I'll see if there's any other questions in here. Helena, thank you. Thank you for helping me out. Yeah. If you like the show, press like, leave a comment. That helps the algorithm. And if you want to support the show, you can become a member here at YouTube or Subscribe Star, Locals, or Patreon. Subscribe Star is probably the best if you want to know which is the best. Jardum. Oh, we did that one. Okay. I think I'm going to make this one another quick one. I know we've only done, oh my gosh, time flies. We have done an hour and a half. I think I'm going to end this one before the 2-hour mark, but just because I kind of want to keep it succinct about how to love people who say they don't want to love you anymore and who want to leave. And I hope that helps someone. A lot of people have been asking me about it, so that's the best advice I can give. If you have specific questions, though, about your situation with friends or family, hit me up in the comments or the chat, and I'll try to offer my best advice for being someone who left it. Jardim for 2 pounds. Are women particularly vulnerable to this? Oh, yes. Yes. I have talked about that many times. Women are particularly vulnerable to social justice ideology, to woke ideology, more so than men. And that's not to put any excess blame on women or anything. It's not through any fault of their own. It's the way that we're made. Women are more, look at the big 5 personality test I mentioned. Look at the way that women are more likely to, on surveys, if you ask women what they want to do, would they rather work with people or things, or what they're interested in? Women put people, men put things. Women are more easily, I think, unfortunately, easily manipulated with emotion. These kind of emotional manipulations we're talking about, where people are saying, I'm going to cut off all contact unless you vote the way I want you to and have the opinions I want you to have, right? Like, women are more susceptible to stuff like that. Women are more susceptible to all the crybaby, emotional blackmail and stuff. Like, if you don't let us mutilate and sterilize kids, then that means you're a bigot. That means you don't like trans kids and you're not protecting trans kids. They fall for these lies. They fall for the lies about, like, if you don't trans your kid's gonna, you know, suicide themselves. That they fall for that stuff more easily than men. Any kind of emotional manipulation. So, because this ideology spreads a lot through gaslighting and manipulation, I think that's why you see more women in it. It perverts, it weaponizes their empathy. It misdirects it, takes advantage of it. That's a way to put it. Most of the time when you see men who are in woke, not all the time, but a lot of the time, when you see men who are in this woke cult, they got in there through a woman. They got in there from a girlfriend, a sister, manipulating them, pulling them in because they love that person. But yes, I do think women are more susceptible to it. Kendra Souter, yes, when you're a woman who doesn't fall for the emotional appeal, they don't know what to do with you. That's true. They don't. When it doesn't work on you. It used to work on me. As I mentioned, I was in it for a long time, and there were things I noticed, and I stayed quiet out of cowardice and emotional manipulation and all of that, but it doesn't work on me anymore, and they don't know quite what to make of you. They'll just call you mean or a bully or a bigot, and when they're bullying you, when they're bullying others, just because you don't go along with it. Also, I think it's Peterson has talked about this. There are people who've talked about this, who articulate it much better than I do. I know Camille Paglia is one of them also, but they've talked about women, especially who don't have children. Now, it doesn't mean there are lots of women with kids who are in it, and they're, I think, providing a bad example for their children, bringing their kids into a cult ideology. That's true. But there are a lot of single women in it and childless women, and your innate biological drive to nurture and protect as a woman, they can more easily use that against you. And they kind of they do this lying, this gaslighting manipulation, where they're kind of like, these identity groups of people are oppressed, and we need you to come and be the mama bear, and you need to push this ideology if you care about these poor, marginalized, oppressed groups. You need to come in and be the mama savior. And I think you see that in women who don't have kids, who get manipulated by it, where it gives them that sense of, taking care of people. It's upside down. That's not the way it's supposed to work. They are perverting that natural drive. I don't mean perverted in a sexual way. I mean perverting it as in like making it wrong. They're misusing it. I think this is true too. A lot of family court. Raphael says our courts have taken masculinity from men by punishing them for doing the right thing. I think that's true. I think we have a lot of problems in family court, just like we have, as I mentioned, problems in all of our institutions now. I've said this before, though. I've started thinking about this. I think this is true, and tell me if you agree or not. But I do think though that women are likely to follow if men can figure out how to stand up and reclaim that masculinity. I say men as a group. I'm not saying there aren't individuals doing it. Of course there are individuals doing this. I'm just saying men as a group have been completely emasculated by this culture. And if men figure out how to lead again, like I do think women will follow out of this bad ideology. If we can get culture back on track to a healthy, positive place that's like focused on human flourishing and success and joy and love, if we can get culture back on that path towards things that are good, I do think a lot of women, even though they got the men into this cult, I think a lot of women will come out of that cult with their men over time. I do. Okay. We are back on our regular schedule. That means I will see you guys on Monday at 1 o'clock Central. And if you like the show, please consider subscribing to the channel, hit the notification bell. What do they say? Hit the bell. And if you like this, if it helps, let me know. If you have specific questions I didn't address, let me know in the chat. We had this Wednesday night was fun. Mystery Chris was back we did a pop culture. We hadn't done one in a little while. And we did a part 1 of the rise and fall of late night TV, which was a lot of fun. We watched some old clips and late night shows I didn't even know about. That was fun. I really want to see somebody revive late night and bring it back to this like really classy place that it was, instead of this crap we have now of these wokesters disguising ideology as comedy and crying on camera about the election and stuff. Ah, somebody get it back on track. But if you haven't seen it, go and check that out. That was fun. I'll be back on Monday at 1 o'clock Central, and I hope you guys have a great weekend. Oh, Jardum with a final super chat. Thank you so much. £5 says Camille Paglia says we need more mothers in universities to correct what is happening. No, I don't think so. Well, I mean, among the women, then yeah, that's kind of what do you mean instead of single women? Then yes. If you're going to choose between mothers and single women, then yes. People who have actually mothered, I think so. I think that might be better. It's sort of what JD Vance was saying, where he was saying, do you think that maybe it's a bad thing that we're trending towards having a lot of childless people in politics? Like maybe we should have people who are parents so they have an invested interest, like actual skin in the game and the future generations, right? Maybe so, but less girl bosses, more caring mothers. That's true. I agree. I can agree with that. Have a great weekend, everyone. I'll see you guys on Monday. Thanks for being here. And yeah, get out the Christmas decorations now. Join me so I'm not the only one. Okay. Talk to you later.